Steve. Okay. All right, so I'm going to start letting them in. We'll give them instructions and then we'll get started.
Okay.
All right. All right, so I see one person still coming in. Yeah, if we could ask those of you that are here for the additional committee members to keep your cameras off until we call on you to speak. And also rename yourself with your first and last name so we can keep track of who's in the room. That would be very helpful.
Nikki, do you want to give a time frame? Would there be a minute, 3 minutes?
They've each been given 3 minutes to speak.
Okay, excellent. Thank you.
Yeah, and we're going to go alphabetically by last name. Okay.
Okay, you good, Nikki?
Yep, I think we're good.
Well, let's bring this meeting to order then at 3:03 p.m. And in the spirit of our standing committee status, we'll take a brief roll call here. Trustee Cervantes.
Present.
And Trustee Andrews is here, all present and accounted for. And then do we have, let's take a look here. Are there any public comments, Nikki or Natalia, on non-agenda items? That'll be our first order of business.
I didn't have any come in. I'll double check the email, but I didn't have any come in on the form.
Okay. All right, just let us know if anything comes in. All right, thanks everybody for being here, and thanks especially for to our guests that are on the line that have applied for a seat on this committee. We really appreciate your involvement with the library and with Altadena, the community in general. Thanks so much, and we'll learn a lot more about you here as we go through. We've got a pretty brief agenda. This is only the second time that we've met. And as I mentioned, we're a standing committee. I'll let you know what that means in just a minute here. And we anticipate meeting monthly going forward, but we're just getting our sea legs right now. And the first item of business that we have doesn't relate to any new members. It relates to a review and approval of some RFPs that we have ready to go out for a couple of positions on the Community Facilities District formation, which is that's the reason for our existence as a committee, is to oversee that. And I'll talk a little bit more about that in a minute. So I guess I'd like to start. There's an action required on number 4A for an approval for the RFP for municipal advisor. And I know, Nikki, you've given me a chance independently to take a look at that and put my comments on there. I believe you've captured all those. And Rushmore, I'm going to assume that the same thing happened with you as well. So
That's correct.
To sort of start things off, I'll go first. I don't have a lot to add to that. I thought it was a pretty solid RFP. One really small thing is that I've seen we've got an RFP for municipal advisory services, and I've seen that often listed as certified or registered municipal advisory services, almost like it's a title. So I don't think you need to put that on, especially since you asked for that as a requirement later on in the agenda, or in the RFP, I should say. But to the extent you could find out if that's a real term that we need to be working under, I would appreciate that. But everything else I thought looked pretty good to me. And just by way of establishing a timeline for this, while we're on this particular one, the proposal is due on April the 1st. So I anticipate that when we get together on April the 14th, we will be reviewing the RFPs that have come in, right? I'm looking at you, Nikki, right? Okay, good. And then teeing up who we recommend out of that group for approval at the full board meeting, which will happen on April the 26th, if I have that right. So is that sort of the timeline we've got now?
It is. What I'm going to need to figure out is, so we're going through this whole process right now with the capital project management. So it's kind of nice because we're learning as we go in terms of this whole timeline. Today, we actually did a Q&A session for potential proposers to ask us questions. So what I'm going to need to figure out, probably with Natalia's help, is whether or not that has to be done like in a live meeting, you know, or if like maybe Nicole and I just conduct the Q&A so that the trustees wouldn't necessarily have to do that as an open meeting. So I'm going to have to figure that out because I don't even know. We just put last submission date for questions. Because typically what's happened in the past is we'll have like an opportunity for people to come and ask questions and walk around the library. And we just don't have that as a possibility right now. So I might need to look at the timeline a little bit, especially if we're going to do the optional interviews, which are listed on that as April 14th. This is on page 9 of the MA one, at least the municipal advisory one. Because again, if you're both involved, I'm not sure if that would have to be done following the Brown Act during an open meeting. So I'll do some more research on that too. Okay, and really the process I outlined is one that we use at the Facilities Committee, which is, as you know, an ad hoc committee in its previous version as well. And it was one in which we took a look at some and sort of did some weaning and then got it in front of the board. But this makes a lot more sense to have a sort of a group interview with the entire board. So it sounds like you're putting that process together right now then, right? So we should stand by and see how that goes. Okay.
Well, if I may, Terry and Nikki's is that if staff, Nikki and her staff were to conduct the interviews without the board members or the committee members, then that's not a Brown Act meeting. But if it's going to involve the committee members, i.e. you and I, or at least one of us, I believe that it would need to be agendized. So, I mean, it really depends. If it's going to be one, you might as well have both of us and perhaps even the other potential candidate or candidates that we're going to elect to be part of this committee as well. Okay, good. You're right about that, Rushmore. So thanks for that.
So what we may want to do is plan on the optional interview, if that's something we're going to pursue, doing that during your standing meeting in April, which is April the 14th. So, and that would involve this entire committee.
And what may suggest, Terry, is that maybe we have, if interviews are requested by staff or recommended by the staff, perhaps they have the conversation with the proposers. And then when the recommendation is brought to the committee, obviously all proposers can submit a public comment and express their opinion one way, shape, or form, whether they support or oppose the decision and tell us why. So, and maybe that's probably the most expedient way, because that way all of us on the committee will then hear, if they want to be heard from, we'll hear it, but subsequent to Nikki and her staff doing the evaluation. So I probably don't want to get into the weeds, let them do their due diligence, bring it to us. And then if something does come up in the course of our committee meeting, then I think that's when we hear from the proposers if they want to be heard. That's my 2 cents.
And I presume too, Nikki, that you and your staff would be doing background checks or reference checks and so on to get into that. And again, when we did this with the ad hoc committee, we did it on our own to a certain extent. The committee members did, and then reported back. So, okay, good. So you'll let us.
I did also want to point out something that, so I had these reviewed by 2 separate attorneys, and one of the attorneys didn't come back with suggestions for edits till after we published this. So I am going to make some other minor tweaks, but nothing of substance, like just little grammatical rewording of a couple things, but nothing that I think really changes the substances of the RFPs at all. So I just wanted to let you guys know I'm going to build in a little bit of editing as well that will go to the full board for review later this month.
So getting back all the way back to where we started, Rushmore, I went first on my comments regarding the proposal for the municipal services part of things. And I guess I'm just turning it, I miss municipal advisory services. Do you have any comments, anything you'd like to add to it?
No, nothing. I mean, I had the opportunity to review the draft, and if there's minor non-substantive edits that need to be included, as Nikki indicated, I'm fine with that as well. But as far as the overall RFP itself, I'm fine with this as is and ready to move forward with the recommendation to have that go to the full board of trustees for consideration.
So sticking to the spirit of our Brown Act committee, I'd like to get a motion and second and vote on approving this version for presentation to the full board at our next meeting.
Okay, just make sure I understand. You would like a presentation from each of the proposers, or?
No, I'm just saying that since this is an action item on our agenda, this whole idea about.
I thought we were approving. I thought today's agenda items are to approve the 2 RFPs as to form now, to have that go to the full board for consideration. I believe that's what's the actions on the table.
Yes,
Yeah.
that's the action. And so we've moved and I've seconded, and
Yeah.
now we'll vote. I vote. You go ahead.
Yep.
Okay, I
Yep.
vote as well. So that little detail here. It seems a little weird to do this with just 2 people.
It does.
And
And to your point, Terry, I will double check whether or not the word registered needs to be used, but like I reviewed probably 6 or 7 other examples and it was never used in the language. So I don't think it's necessary, but I'll verify that.
Okay, good. And then our next action item under 4C would be an action regarding adding committee member or members to our committee. And we'll get into that in just a minute with statements from the folks that have put their hat in the ring for this. But I thought it would be good for me, and I made a few points here I've written down, to describe this committee as fully as we can at this point. And Rushmore, I'll start and let you add anything that I may have missed, so that the people that have voiced interest in joining it will know pretty close to what it is we envision, or at least we envision right now for the committee. So you've heard me talk a couple of times now about the fact that the CFD Committee, Community Facilities District Committee, is a standing committee, and it'll operate under the Brown Act as per Section 4 of our board policies and procedures. And also working under Section 4 of the policies and procedures, we'll hear from people today and we'll make a recommendation to, you'll hear our vote at the end of the session here, to the board at the next meeting. And then that has to be made official with an appointment at the board. So I don't anticipate any variation from the people or person that we nominate for this, but we do have to sort of get it certified at the board meeting. And I want to also describe our function a little bit. We'll be primarily involved in financial activities, and we'll function almost more as a bond oversight body, which is a term I saw in a couple of the resumes that came in here. We're not expected to play a major role in the actual design or the building processes of the library itself. That will be reserved for the community, for the facilities committee, which will bring recommendations to us. So for those of you that may have thought that this is a committee that would get involved in the nuts and bolts of disabled access and where the ramps will go and the elevators and so on, I doubt that we'll be really playing much of a role in that at all. Ours will be an oversight function. We'll put together a financial team and recommend them and get them hired and so on, and get reports from them on an ongoing basis. And I think that for my part, anyway, I'll be learning about a lot of these things as we go along. And a way to differentiate between the 2 bodies, that being the CFD committee and the facilities committee, is that our committee will be responsible for raising capital as per the guidelines that have been established for the formation of our community facilities district, the sale of bonds, where we put the money once it comes in, things like that, accounting for it, et cetera. But the facilities committee and also the full board will be responsible for the process of spending that money. So they'll be more on the creative side, we'll be more on the accounting side. And I want to make sure that was properly and completely expressed to everybody. I think with Rushmore and I, the idea of adding a committee member was twofold. And Rushmore, I'll let you talk to this here when I'm done with my list in a minute. And that is to make sure that we had some interaction with the community so that we can guarantee the transparency about how this money is raised and how it's spent. And in addition, we hope to get the bonus of a new committee member that might have been at least partially through a process like this before and to give us some practical advice about how to proceed. I'm sure that we'll talk about that a lot. And in our advisory capacity, again, we won't be making the policy ourselves, but we'll be taking our ideas on the way that we vote on our action items to the board for full ratification at the board meetings coming up. We anticipate being fairly busy, so we've got our meeting scheduled every second Wednesday at 3 o'clock through the rest of the year. That means another 10 or so meetings this year, unless we roll that back a little bit. And then we might settle into a rhythm that's very much like the budget committee. And I guess you've got that meeting tomorrow, right, Rushmore? That meets on a more episodic basis. They'll meet every third or every quarter of the year to look at the budget and also to make adjustments in the ongoing budget. So those are things that I thought you should know. Those of you that are out there waiting to tell us about your qualifications for a seat on this board. And I'm going to turn it over to Rushmore. Is there anything I missed, Rushmore, that you'd like to add to that?
Well, Terry, you've covered everything very nicely. I'll just say for those that are watching is that with the passage of Z, there's expectations, of course, that we rehabilitate the libraries to the greatest extent possible. And the function of both raising the capital through Z and issuing bonds to be able to pay for the capital improvements and the oversight of the actual rehabilitation has been divided for reasons of transparency and that there's separation of duties and functions. And Terry and I in this committee have a very important role for the taxpayers of Aldeanas to ensure that in the ensuing years, that people know where their monies went and how they were spent. The decision on what they're going to be spent on through the design of the capital improvements is going to be done separately. There will be some obviously interaction between the two, but as Terry clearly indicated, this is very critical relative to ensuring that we maximize this opportunity to get the greatest amount of money in at the cheapest price to be able to effectuate the rehabilitation of these buildings and doing so in a timely fashion. So this is very critical from a transparency standpoint, but also critical from a financial standpoint to all taxpayers. And for those that are in the queue to volunteer to be a participant in this committee, I thank you for doing this. This is awkward, but Terry and I see this as a very critical committee that everyone's going to be keeping their eyes on, because this is really, people are going to, where was the money spent? And that's going to be basically us as far as issuing the money. So appreciate that. And Terry, I'll turn it back over to you so we can begin hearing from the candidates.
Okay, good. Thank you, Rushmore. So the process that we'll use right now is to go through the list of candidates that we have in the way that they were presented alphabetically and get a 3-minute statement from you about why you think you would be a good fit for this. This isn't really a Q&A situation. This is you telling us about yourself. And we'll give 3 minutes to everybody. I'll put it on a timer to be very fair about this and let you know when your time is up. And anything you can tell us regarding your why you'd like to do this and what your skill set for making it work are would be much appreciated. So we'll go ahead. Oh, and let me tell you this also. Nikki, did you have something you want to say?
I just wanted to let you know that Steve Lamb let Natalia know that he withdrew his application.
Okay.
Okay. And we don't have one of the candidates in right now. I'm trying to reach out. So it may just be 3.
Okay.
Just to let you know.
So I see we have Amy Lyford and Barbara Brand. And who's the third on the line right now?
Kim Kenny is joining by audio. She was having some issues with her Zoom connection.
Okay, so we'll keep that alphabetical list intact and get started. One other thing I should tell you is that Rushmore and I have not had a chance to discuss publicly the actual number of committee members that we want to put on our committee. Having an odd number is preferable in case there are voting, impasses that we need to break with a third vote. But we at least need one and possibly three, and we'll discuss that as soon as this is over. So, Barbara, I'm going to stop talking now and turn it over to you for a 3-minute statement. Barbara, I will tell you that we're having some issues, at least I am, with your audio. And I'm wondering if there's something on your end that might be very scratchy. We can't hear you. A little better, but still kind of scratchy.
Are you
Nikki,
using
is there a number
headphones?
she calling on?
Sorry, what was that, Rushmore?
Nikki, can Barbara perhaps leave her video on and call in, perhaps?
Yeah, that would be good. Why don't we just move ahead to Kim and then we'll come back to Barbara. Is that okay?
That sounds great.
Okay.
So Kim, you are on. You can go ahead and get started.
Sorry, I had to unmute first. Hi, my name is Kim Kenny. Can you hear me now?
Yes, and we will add that 10 seconds on to the end of your time, okay?
No, that's fine. Don't worry about it.
I'm kidding you. Go ahead.
Hi, I've been here in Altadena for quite a while. I actually moved in right around the Northridge earthquake time. And I am currently on the Pasadena Unified School Board. And so I have been dealing for quite a while, 10 years, with Brown Acted meetings, preparing for meetings, reading a lot of contracts and other kinds of forms. I've served in other areas of Altadena. I was on Altadena Heritage for a number of years as well. I am the daughter of a librarian and am an avid reader, so I have a big space in my heart for libraries. My son actually had been part of the chess club that was meeting each week at the Altadena Library before the pandemic came. So I greatly appreciate the way the library has really expanded to be part of the community. I think that my experience on the school board will be very useful. I was also on our facilities committee and was the liaison between our school
Altadena
board
Library
and our
District, this is Nikki.
oversight committee. So just to let you know, I have experience in that kind of arena. I do like looking at data and numbers, and I think that sounds like something that might fit with what this position is as well. I think that's it.
Does that complete your statement? Okay, thanks, Kim, very much for that. And we will go ahead now to Amy Lyford. Barbara, we'll come back to you in just a couple of minutes. So Amy, I'd like to have you go next, please.
Hi, thank you for hosting this meeting. My name's Amy Lyford. I'm a professional educator. I'm a professor at Occidental College over in Eagle Rock. I've been in Altadena since the fall of 1999, and I was recently elected to represent the Census Tract 4601 on the Altadena Town Council. My interest in serving on this committee really has to do with the kinds of issues of transparency that Rushmore was talking about. I've been very involved in governance at Occidental. I've been not only a professor and a department chair, but also the chair of the faculty as well as an associate dean. And in my role as an associate dean, I worked very closely with the dean and was a member of the Budget and Strategic Advisory Committee for 3 years. I've also been a principal investigator on 4 institutional grants at Occidental for about $3 million, 3 with the Mellon Foundation and 1 with the Keck Foundation. And I actually am very interested in thinking about the financing and the way that we move forward with the work on the refurbishment and thinking about programming and perhaps talking with the trustees about other modes of funding that might be through private foundations that are in support of educational work. I also think that my interest in being on the committee has to do with my desire to make a link between the Altadena Town Council and the Board of Trustees of the library. And as a professional educator, I'm really interested in finding ways to increase that transparency, but also make connection between those 2 bodies. So thank you for giving me an opportunity to speak with you today.
Okay, thank you very much, Amy. And then, Barbara, we'd like to go back to you. Are you hooked up with your phone now? Your mute button is on. If you're there, you might need to take that off.
I am. Okay, can you hear me now?
Yes, and much better too. Thank you.
Perfect.
So you can go ahead.
All right, I was going to try to start my video, but I'm unable to do so. But we'll move forward. My name is Barbara Brand. And as I was mentioning, I am a recent Altadena transplant. I was based in downtown Los Angeles. I am an industrial designer by training and an engineering manager and product manager for hardware companies in new and advanced technologies. I have worked in large manufacturing projects, developing novel technologies and bringing them to market, including manufacturing overseas and in the northern United States. So my background is in planning, management, design decisions, and expediting new product introductions. So it's a little bit of a adjacent skill set. My interest in participating in the library committee is to learn more about how these processes get fleshed out and learn how to participate in these types of public-facing financial decision-making. I'm currently working in Pasadena at a molecular biology tech startup, and I'm really interested in setting down roots here and seeing how new technologies are brought up through the educational system, including the library programs and all of the educational resources that we have available and that we bring to the local Altadena community. All right.
Okay, good. Okay.
Thank you so much for hearing me out. And I'm excited to see where this goes.
Yeah, thank you very much for that and for applying. Often when we do this, we get people to go way past their 3 minutes. So every one of you yielded some time back to the floor. So we appreciate that. All right. We've got 3 of you. Thanks so much again for coming today and being part of this. Now comes a question that we really haven't addressed.
No, Terry, Jim Vital is on the line now.
Okay, good.
Yeah. Okay.
Hi, Jim. Are you there?
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Can you hear me?
We can. Did you get kind of the ground rules for your presentation?
I'm sorry, say again?
I said, did you get hear the ground rules? That being, you've got 3 minutes, and we'll put a timer on it.
Yeah.
Okay.
I did hear the ground. So I've written a little bit of a statement here. I'm going to have to revise my statement because have indicated a course of direction that I was not clear at. The course of direction that you are choosing to go, and it would be the responsibility of the committee, are similar to what I did for 4 years on the Bond Oversight Committee for Pacific Unified for their recent construction bond for a school. Licensed architect in the state of California, a senior architect working for the state, have 50 years working on projects of this type with small and large budgets, both historic and non-historic properties, both commercial, residential, federal, and state sector. I am fully aware of what the responsibilities are from a bond oversight standpoint and have had, as I say, involvement with and authority for both large and small numbers with regards to projects. And it is my hope that with my experience, and I appear to be the only one with construction and architecture experience, would be in a best position to be able to evaluate requests for fund expenditures as they come up, as well as questioning costs associated with any change orders that may come up as a result of unforeseen conditions. And I have lived in Altadena since 1995. I live 3 blocks from the site, and I am committed to giving 100% of my time over the next 3 years to ensure that this legacy to our community is maintained. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Jim. Appreciate that. Now, Nikki, we've gotten everybody that's on the line now, right?
That is correct, yes.
Okay, good. So Rushmore, one thing that you and I haven't talked about is the idea of how many people we would, people we would want to add to seats for this committee. And we've got obviously some well-qualified candidates here. Again, with the goal for us to make sure that we're operating under the transparency that comes with a citizen member on the committee, and also using that person to glean experience and so on. That's our goal on this adding this position. And I guess we just need to come right out and talk in the beginning about whether we want to add 1 or 3 members to the community going forward. And I did my best at the beginning of this to let people know that this is going to be pretty much, in my eyes, a financial committee. There is, I believe, a working group that will revolve around the facilities part of it too, the part of, you know, what projects we're doing and how much they're going to cost, et cetera, the creative aspect, I should say, of what will happen going forward with the library expenditures. So I'll just come right on and ask you, in your mind, did you have a number in mind that you'd like to add to the board, to the committee? I'm sorry.
Terry, I didn't have necessarily a number, but I certainly knew that we would need an odd number, so either 1 or 3. And you know, we were going to leave this somewhat open-ended to see, you know, what type of volunteers came forward. And I think that you know, from what we've heard, we've got 4 impressive people here, and it's going to be hard to select 1 or 3, let alone 1. So. And for those the 4 of you that participated, it's very strange when you hear other people talking about you in a public forum like this. So it is a little odd, but the way I see it, based on the fact that we've got 4 really qualified candidates, Terry, I think that I would probably recommend going with 3. That way it creates an odd number. And that's, I think that from the 4 that we heard from this afternoon, I think that certainly any of the 4 would make up a strong committee, and I'd be ready to move forward with certainly recommending 3 to move forward to the full board for consideration.
Yeah, I'm in agreement with you about that. Initially, when we first talked about adding a member, I thought maybe 1 would be the way to go, but I didn't expect that we would get this many really well-qualified candidates who all want to make a difference in the community. So I think 3 is the number, and the way that I know this sounds a little awkward the way we're doing it, it's exactly the way we did it for Rushmore when he applied for the open trustee seat. We talked about the whole thing in front of him, okay, who are we going to vote for? And it all is public right there. So I will start with, since I asked you the question about numbers, I'm gonna, and I agree with 3 being the number we would like to add. I'm gonna go ahead and put in my vote for the 3 of the candidates out of the 4 here. And I would vote for Jim Vitale and for also for Amy Lyford and Kim Kinney. Those would be my 3 choices.
And, those are my 3 as well. And Barbara, there's no disrespect to you. It's just a different background and experience. So it's, but I would recommend those 3 as well, Terry.
Okay, great. And Barbara, Rushmore's right. It's very difficult to do this, especially when people are listening in. But thank you very much for applying, and keep your ear to the ground regarding a work team that might be put together for the facilities committee, which we'll be talking about the actual projects we do and when they're done and so on. So thank you very much for applying. And that means that Amy and James and Kim, we are going to take your names back to the board at the next meeting, which is scheduled for February the 22nd. And we will put your names forward. I'm sure it'll be a formality to get you appointed. And we will be in touch with you about email addresses and things like that. Another thing is fair to tell you right now is that since this is a committee that operates under the Brown Act, it would be prudent for you to be given resources about a little bit of Brown Act training, what it means and how you discuss business regarding the committee, just outside of the committee setting itself. A lot to know. And I know some of you might be familiar with that, but others might need a refresher. So I think Nikki will be following up with information and sources about those items there. So congratulations and thanks very much.
Yes, thank you very much, everyone.
So I think that concludes our business. Nikki, unless we're missing something, or do you have any comments?
Nikki's internet crashed, but I am here and we have no comments.
Okay, great. Moving on now to, so all of you, I can see you're still on the line that have been nominated for this position. We will be in touch with you, probably Nikki and her staff, to give you a little bit more information right after the next board meeting on February the 22nd. Okay, and thanks very much. You can stay on if you'd like. The last item are proposed future agenda items. Rushmore, and I wonder if you've got anything that you'd like to add for the next meeting.
Other than just, I think we discussed time frame for the RFPs, but other than that, nothing else to add right now.
Okay, great. And of course, if you do have anything, just let Nikki or me know before the next meeting.
Absolutely.
All right. Well, with that, it's 3:37, and I would move to adjourn the meeting.
I support that and second it.
Okay, I hope this too. So this meeting is now adjourned. And thanks everybody for your time.